Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. Good evening, dear friends. Tonight, I thought of speaking to you about a particular sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya. It's the sutta called Māluṅkyaputta Sutta. This is not the most famous sutta about Māluṅkyaputta. His most famous sutta is called Chula Māluṅkya Sutta, where this bhikkhu, he's interested in philosophy. I guess he's considered to be an intellectual monk who was somewhat lacking in common sense. He asked the Buddha, this is a different sutta than the one we're on tonight, but to set the character. He wanted to know, is the cosmos eternal or not eternal? Is the cosmos infinite or finite? Is the soul the same as the body or separate from it? And does the Tathagata, the enlightened one, exist after death or not? And these are questions that the Buddha says are out of order, not answerable. The reason these questions are not answerable is that the questions only make sense in the context of the belief that there is a soul essence, that there is a atta, that there is a self within any living being, or paralleled within the internal of an individual, and then somehow linked to the infinite cosmos as both being reflections of this hypothetical self. And the Buddha has said that he tried to find teaching that was based on a self. And his discovery was that that kind of belief only leads to the perpetuation of misery. And because it only leads in the wrong direction, therefore he does not teach a concept of self as part of the Dhamma. He then gave the parable of the poisoned arrow. He compared Māluṅkyaputta to a person who has been shot with a poisoned arrow but refuses treatment until he knows the name, caste, and hometown of the person who shot him. But such a one would die before ever getting the treatment. But instead, the Buddha recommends that one should undertake the practice according to the gradual training in order to realize the extinguishment of the taints through non-desire. And that's the only thing that's relevant, is the practical training. So that's the background on Māluṅkyaputta. This particular sutta came to my attention because I've been interested in the bridge between meditation and wisdom, and how meditation creates the condition for the arising of wisdom. This sutta is recommended by a particular scholar who I like very much. I'm going to show you his book. Mindfulness in Early Buddhism by Seifu Kwan. He's a really nicest one among the scholarly writers. He's a really useful writer because there's a certain simplicity and a common sense, in my opinion, and his writings are very solidly grounded in the early suttas, without either getting lost in speculation or wandering too much into a comparison with other philosophical schools outside of what the Buddha taught. So I have been quite taken with this writer as a good source when I want to know what did the Buddha say, or have some different angles, some different ways of seeing what the Buddha taught. And so with that preamble, I'm going to bring and the sutta up on the screen for us to see. Okay, here we go. Māluṅkyaputta Sutta. The Venerable Māluṅkyaputta went to the Buddha and asked him, "Sir, may the Buddha teach me the Dhamma in brief. When I've heard it, I'll live alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, and resolute." This is a very suitable way to invite a teacher to teach, to have that resolution to really listen to the teachings and to make the effort to try to take those teachings on board. But Māluṅkyaputta is elderly by this time, and he didn't gain his full enlightenment until later, after hearing this sutta. So first the Buddha kind of gently scolds him. "Well, now, Māluṅkyaputta, what are we to say to the young monks when even an old man like you, elderly and senior, advanced in years, having reached the final stage of life, asks for brief advice?" He answers, "Sir, even though I'm an old man, elderly and senior, may the Buddha please teach me Dhamma in brief. May the Holy One please teach me Dhamma in brief. Hopefully I can understand the meaning of what the Buddha says. Hopefully I can be an heir of the Buddha's teaching." So to be an heir of the Buddha's teaching would be to be a noble disciple. So now the Buddha questions him. He says, "What do you think? Do you have any desire, greed, or fondness for sights known by the eye that you haven't seen, you've never seen before, you don't see, and you don't think would be seen?" No, sir. That's a very tricky question. What he's trying to pull out here is somebody who has got a craving for the self. I'm giving you the punchline ahead of time. Someone who has the craving for the self has got a craving for something that does not exist. But it could be that a person who has a sense desire would long to see something new, something that they've never seen before, or to find something that never exists before. But in this case, if you don't think it would be seen, that's like some kind of a person who's looking for a mystical experience, looking for something that's unknowable, and trying to see and experience the thing that's unknowable. Oh, just the other day, I happened to come across a saying that's given in the Vedanta tradition of Hinduism, that was about how through the sense base we see an object like a tree, and then with consciousness, one can see what's the input coming in through the sense base. And then it says, with the self, one can see the consciousness, but you can never see the self. I'm not advocating this statement, but in this case, those thinkers have built up a devotional, religious, and philosophical, mystical experience that has something at the center of it which cannot be seen, which is not knowable. And this is not what the Buddha is recommending, but here the Buddha's, I think, challenging to see whether Māluṅkyaputta is fallen into some kind of longing for something that can only be speculated about, but never can be actually seen. Then he asks, do you have any desire, greed, or affection for sounds known by the ear, smells known by the nose, tastes known by the tongue, touches known by the body, or ideas known by the mind that you haven't known, you've never known before, you don't know, and you don't think would be known? And Māluṅkyaputta says, no, sir. So at least he's beyond this longing for something which is not knowable, or beyond the longing to experience something that cannot be experienced. Okay. And then the Buddha answers with this very beautiful and famous expression. In that case, when it comes to things that are able to be seen, heard, thought, and known, in the seen will be merely the seen, in the heard will be merely the heard, in the thought will be merely the thought, in the known will be merely the known. Yeah. So this is allowing what arises to experience to be seen and recognized, but because there's not craving and attachment, there would not be grasping after those objects, resulting in the proliferation of craving and wishes and desires about these objects. When there's the craving and the proliferation, then the consciousness can become attached and obsessed with some particular kind of object, and even though we know everything is impermanent, because of that obsession, the mind keeps coming back again and again and again to that same kind of that same object. And so then this is how the mind is actually not able to see impermanence, because it keeps coming back and trying to attach to something, which actually only arose to awareness for a moment, had its existence, and then came to its end. But with the simplicity, one can see things able to be seen, heard, thought, known, merely as they are. And then the Buddha says, when this is the case, you won't be by that thing. And when you're not by that thing, you won't be in that. And when you're not in that, you won't be in this life or the next, or between the two. This is just the end of suffering. And so in this case, this you here, that's just the simple pronoun you. That's it's not yet the atta. It's not the. It's just the person that you see in the mirror. It's not yet any fabrication of an imagined self. But nevertheless, if you feel that your existence is coming about by means of the things that you experience, and if you think that your experiences are cut off when your experiences are cut off, that your own existence is cut off, or if you think that you can find yourself in your sense experiences or in your thoughts, then you begin to build up an ego, build up an identification. And when you build up that identification, you're building up the attachment, attempting to fix some kind of solid existence to something which is ephemeral. But because of this attaching, then this is what provides the fuel for the round of existence, so that attaching to objects becomes the nutriment to a continual existence through this lifespan, and it also provides the nutriment for you to for the jumping ahead to the subsequent life, or the life in between. And when that is not there, that's the end of suffering. Now, how does this come to be? And so far, it's really philosophical, but now the verse makes it very practical. When you see a sight, mindfulness is lost as you focus on a pleasant feature, experiencing it with the mind full of desire. You keep clinging to it. That's the attachment. Many feelings grow, arising from the sight. The mind is damaged by covetousness and cruelty. Heaping up suffering like this, you are said to be far from extinguishment, far from nibbana. And likewise, for each one of the senses. Mindfulness is lost when you focus on the pleasant feature. This pleasant feature is not necessarily something that actually resides in the object, but it's almost a fabrication of the mind. Any object that you experience in this world has got so many qualities. It's almost like an infinity of qualities. Even if you go out into the forest and you see a mossy rock or a boulder peacefully resting on the ground in the forest, and there's so many qualities and so much history and so much causation that resulted in that rock or that boulder having to be there in that place. And there's something. It's even a kind of a something that could be pondered, like the weight of the rock, the temperature of the rock, the connection of the rock to the ground and the earth element. Maybe it's foggy or misty outside, and you can feel that the moisture is clinging to the rock, and it's providing the strata for the soft moss to grow, and the contrast of the softness of the moss and the hardness of the rock or the boulder. All of those things, like there's so many details in any object that you could experience with the senses, and yet the mind can latch on to some aspect of it by which you recognize that object. And if it's accompanied by craving, then you're thinking, like, how is this object good for me? So, like, here's a glass of water, and if I'm thirsty, it's good for me. So the mind just latches on that this water will quench my thirst. That's one of the reasons why I gave the example of the boulder. The objects that you find in nature very often are not necessarily good for you or bad for you in the same kind of a way, unless I guess if you see that a rock or the boulder, you could think that you could sit on it and take a rest and then have a very shallow, narrow, limited, almost it's almost like corrupted, that here's this amazing object out there in nature that's come to the state it's at because of thousands of years of its existence there in nature, and then all you see is a bench to sit on. That's how the mind has grasped something just based on craving and what it wants. And then when the mind grasps like that, then feelings grow. The mind is damaged, greed, trying to appropriate something. So I could say that's my bench, or that's my water. If somebody tries to take my water, then I could feel annoyed, and I could snap at them and scold them. Don't take my water. Don't sit on my bench. See, so that's how one comes to be far from extinguishment. On the other hand, and this is for the five senses, and it's also for an idea. And ideas are even more dangerous than material objects. It's much more commonplace for people to fall into the delusion about identification and to fall into a craving, fall into covetousness and cruelty in the contest about ideas than it is for them about the contest with material objects. Now, but here's the opposite case. There's no desire for sights when you see a sight with mindfulness, experiencing it with a mind free of desire. You don't keep clinging to it. And likewise with all of the kinds of objects. So this is a different definition of the most important quality of mindfulness. It's not just this, with mindfulness you're contemplating form, feeling, the states of mind and facets of the Dhamma. It's not only what you are contemplating that makes mindfulness, but it's how you contemplate. And when you contemplate with mindfulness, the result of that is being free from this raja, this desire, this passion. When the mind has the experience without that passion, you become, the mind is disinterested or detached. You're not thinking about that object in terms of, this is good for me, this is bad for me. I want it, I hate it. I'm keeping it or I'm throwing it away. You're not thinking in those terms because the object is just allowed to be as it is. In the scene is only the scene. And then because the mind is free of desire, you don't keep clinging to it. And so then there's not the opportunity for obsession to arise and for the obsessed mind to keep coming back again and again, grasping after that same object and trying in vain to take something which is actually impermanent and trying to make it into a possession of the self. Even as you see a sight and get familiar with how it feels, you wear away. You don't heap up. So your possessiveness, your accumulating of things which are part of your identity is not accumulating. You're not adding anything more as being part of your identity. And this not heaping up is coming very close to the ideal of the Arhat. That's how you live mindfully. Eroding dukkha like this, you're said to be in the presence of extinguishment, in the presence of nibbana. And the same thought for each one of the five senses and for the mind and a subject with thoughts. In this case, in my opinion, this shows how the shamatha, or the calming, is an important aspect of mindfulness. So sati and samadhi are not two separate practices. There's a lot of samadhi within sati, a lot of tranquility within mindfulness, and there's also a lot of mindfulness within tranquility. So the agitation that comes from grasping, the fear and anxiety that comes from trying to hold on to something which is actually impermanent, is not there. And because there's no grasping, then when the object disappears, there's no disturbance whatsoever in the mind. So the mind, which doesn't have any disturbance resulting from grasping and craving, is the mind which is perfectly peaceful. And then that peacefulness is the extinguishment, in the sense of putting out the flame, putting out the fire of greed, putting out the fire of hatred. Going back up to the previous thought, when the Buddha was saying that when one doesn't have the longing or desire for something that doesn't exist, you wouldn't be by that. When you're not by that, you won't be in that. When you're not in that, you won't be in this life or the next or between the two. In my opinion, this could be taken to be the wisdom side of the teaching here. It's a little bit tricky to get a hold of, because the wisdom teaching is given in the form of a negation. But wisdom, in this case, is non-delusion. So you are free from the delusion of being the product of the sense experiences. You're free from the delusion of being part of the sense objects, and you're free of the delusion that that there's a self which exists in this life, which is going to be carried forward into the next life. So I take this as a statement of non-delusion, and because Māluṅkyaputta is a foolish philosopher, the Buddha is expressing it in kind of a philosophical terminology, because he's trying to help Māluṅkyaputta to abandon and give up his any kind of a wrong notion or wrong perceptions. And then he guides Māluṅkyaputta away from intellectual speculation into something that's much more experiential, like how one reacts when seeing a pleasant object, and the mind occasionally grasping after the pleasant features, or else alternatively having the occasion when the mind is disinterested and separated from that object without having any sense of ownership or any sense of wanting to appropriate and use that object to perpetuate oneself. So I suppose one could be like looking at the glass of water, and it's just a glass of water, but no interest in having it, no interest in consuming it. Or one could encounter that beautiful mossy rock in the middle of the forest, and you're not going to use it for anything. You're not going to make it a bench. You're not going to take it home and plant it in your garden. You're not going to take a photograph of that beautiful object and put it on your Facebook so the world will know that you had this beautiful experience. Instead, the object of perception, it is what it is. And this is just repeating the same teaching for each one. There's no desire for ideas when you know an idea with mindfulness, experiencing it with a mind free of desire. You don't keep clinging to it, even as you know an idea and get familiar with how it feels. You wear away, you don't heap up. That's how to live mindfully, eroding suffering like this. You're said to be in the presence of extinguishment. Oh, excuse me, I misspoke. The verses were Māluṅkyapputta's statement. He says, that's how I understand the detailed meaning of the Buddha's brief statement. And now the Buddha affirms him. It's good for you to understand the detailed meaning of what was said in brief like this. And then he repeated the verse in full. That's how to understand the detailed meaning of what I said. Then the Venerable Māluṅkyaputta approved and agreed with what the Buddha said, got up from his seat, bowed, respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right before leaving. Then, living alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, and resolute, soon realized the supreme end of the spiritual path in this very life. He lived having achieved with his own insight the goal for which a gentleman rarely goes forth from life into homelessness. So I brought this sutta to you to show the interaction between wisdom and calming down. When you're able to calm down to whatever extent you let go of this continuous habit of appropriating, keeping, like and dislike, being attached to one's preferences, being attached to experiences to whatever extent that attachment subsides, and one can simply experience the flow of experience see how it is when things arise. They're there, then they're gone. Letting go brings a wonderful pleasant kind of a calmness. And with that calmness, it becomes even more easily to intuitively recognize, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. I'm going to pause here and look for questions. Welcome, Gregory, Manal, Bhumika, Ryan. At the beginning of your talk, and a week ago, you spoke of practicing samatha vipassana, vipassana samatha, and samatha vipassana together. In Anguttara 4.170, yes, Ananda talks about these 3 ways to arahanthood. The 4th way in Anguttara 4.170. Let me circle back to this in a moment. I'm going to see if there's anything. This is about the present sutta that we've looked at. I think it's slightly different than what you're saying. So I'm going to come back to Ryan's question. Here's a question from Chintana. Is there a way to end suffering of the body that is approved of by the Buddha? Bodily pain can just be what it is. It's bodily pain, or it can be accompanied by aversion, anxiety, dislike, and so on. Or even it can be accompanied by so many huge variety of unwholesome qualities. Even I could say that even remorse and self-hatred, there's so many things that can come about because of bodily pain. And it's because of the way the mind, in a certain way, when it perceives pain, the mind tries to explain the pain. And it's very easy to for the mind to concoct all kinds of different stories about why the body is painful. So maybe the body is painful because some bad people are harming me. Or you could say the body is painful because I'm a bad person. Or you could say the body is painful and this is going to kill me. And so then it brings up like a fear about the end of one's existence. So many different ways that the mind fabricates about pain. So the Buddha definitely gave the first advice, the advice about the 2 arrows, to let go of the second arrow and really dispense with all of those mental fabrications that can gather around physical pain. Then, when it comes to the physical pain itself, the Buddha does not condemn having medical treatment for physical pain. Even in the case of the story of the arrows, the Buddha recommended just let the doctor pull the arrow out and apply some medicine to it so that then it can heal and the pain can be over. So medical care for pain is definitely allowed, even though we know that all the medical care in the world finally fails in the end, because with old age and sickness, the body is very often continues to experience a variety of pains, and the medicine can hardly keep up with all of them. Using medicine for pain relief is allowed. If one is capable of gaining samadhi, gaining jhana meditation, then it can happen that the mind loses interest in the five senses because it's been like engaged in being interested in the state of mind or the consciousness itself, or the mental aspects, like the pleasant feelings and so forth that are associated with that meditation. And so learning that kind of meditation is good if you can, to have some temporary relief from pain while one is in that meditation. And if you don't have the opportunity or the training to learn how to withdraw in that way, because everybody doesn't, then practicing soothing meditation, taking a tranquil, soothing object like loving kindness and compassion, and keeping the mind engaged with the thought of loving kindness, or engaged with the thought of compassion, that can reduce the pain, because that's not what the mind is focusing on at that time. Gregory comments, this is similar to the teaching of Ayyā. Yes. So the Buddha approved of Māluṅkyaputta's interpretation. So I think you could take this as a canonical explanation, at least of the way to come to experiencing in the seen is only the seen, when there's no desire for those sense experiences, when you know those experiences with mindfulness, experiencing them with a mind free of desire, then you will not keep clinging to those sense experiences, and then you will know in the seen is only the seen. Or alternatively, if you don't bring the defilements or the greed and hatred to the experience, and you don't grasp it with greed and hatred, then in the seen is only the seen, because you don't have the seen plus its companion hatred, or the seen plus its companion desire. So now I'm going to come back to 4.170. I think we've got a few minutes, so I can look at that. Okay, yeah, right, the last one. So the first three are kind of clear. You get serenity first, and then discernment second, or you get discernment first, serenity second, or else the both are coming together, bound together like a pair of oxen that are yoked together and pulling the cart along. And then the last one in this path, in this explanation, is mentioning a mendicant whose mind is seized by restlessness to realize the teaching. And this is particularly speaking about somebody who is a noble disciple, among the fetters that are keeping one tied in the round of samsara. One of the last group of fetters to be abandoned is this fetter of restlessness. And as I understand it, that fetter is because one who is a noble disciple has had a glimpse, a view of extinguishment. They have seen extinguishment. They know what extinguishment is, and yet they have not yet extinguished the fetters. And then they may have a craving, thinking, oh, if only I could go that last step and finally come to the full extinguishment. And that craving, that wish, that longing is itself, that is the restlessness. And that restlessness becomes then an impediment at the very end. And if one is able to actually let go, you've got to let go of everything completely. And then when you no longer have the desire for Nibbana, then it's possible for Nibbana to arise and for one to experience that complete freedom. So the fourth way is explained by a different bhikkhu, Mahatera Dhammavuddo, that this fourth monk is meditating on the self, which is the I am, the thought or the feeling of I am. So that will be another one of the last final of the last three fetters. The last three fetters are the conceit, I am, restlessness, and delusion. So he was speaking about the coming to the end of those last three fetters. So then, even if you have a person has come to recognize that this body is not me, not mine. These feelings, pleasant, unpleasant feelings, I don't identify with that. The thoughts and ideas, I don't identify with that. Even the consciousness of self, the knowing quality, I don't identify with that. I don't identify with any of the five khandhas. and yet still with all of the things that we experience in every day, like, as I sit here and I look at you, if I could see you, or at least I could see your names. So then whatever you experience is from the point of view or the perspective that is sort of like within yourself. Like if you're looking at physical things, it's something like inside the head. It seems to be all of the things around you that you're looking at are seen in relationship to where they are in relationship to this body. And to the extent that you're giving a certain, like a preference to your own experience, you've still got that subtle self-conceit. And that's one of the last fetters to be let go. So it is definitely inbuilt in all of us. It's not the only source of the ego. There are many, many different sources of the ego, and the self that you build up, like part of your ego comes from your culture. Part of your ego comes from all the messages you got from mother and father when you were a baby. Part of the ego comes from ideas that you built up over time, like your autobiography is also supporting your ego. And then also the pain and pleasure reactions of the body is part of the ego. Even the primitive reactions that people have to pull away from something painful or to reach for something which is pleasant, all of those things are contributing to the ego. So the ego is this very complicated thing that's got many, many, many sources. But then, like one of the very last things, according to this teaching, the very last one to be let go of it is this self-conceit that because of the way that phenomenon are experienced, seeming to all be centered someplace within the body, that the mind keeps fabricating the thought that there's a self right at the center of all those experiences. But there's not a self at the center. It's merely a process that's flowing on. The contemplation of the mind, how the mind works, is a very profound, important contemplation. The Chittanupassana in the Four Foundations of Mindfulness is really the contemplation of your own mind, how the mind works. And the interior of the mind is the last hideout for the delusion of self. And so when you contemplate the mind, it's for the purpose of becoming disenchanted with the mind. So you're not fooled anymore. You see that the mind itself is impermanent. The mind itself is conditioned. The mind itself is dukkha. And so you lose interest in keeping attachment to the mind because of having seen it in its true nature as it is. And then with the tranquility comes from the letting go. Every time you let go, the mind becomes more and more tranquil. So I don't especially recommend meditating on the self. That's almost like looking for trouble. I think rather what the Buddha is recommending is to simply meditate on the phenomena that come along through the senses, including the mind. And then you'll encounter thoughts of the self. And when you encounter them, you'll see that those are merely concepts. But I think that what the Buddha recommends as the object of contemplation would be through the six senses. That's one important set, or else through the five aggregates. But at this level, I think more through the six senses. But indeed, the more you let go, the more the mind becomes tranquil. Now, let's do not try to calm the mind by focusing on the self. Just simply go deeper and deeper into the experience of the phenomena that arise in the mind as they're arising and passing away. So that's my understanding of what the practice is, and that would be the practice that was recommended here in this particular sutta. That let the meditation be like the senses and the contact with the senses and the phenomena that arise from that. That's plenty enough objects to themes of meditation to watch, and that you can find nibbana there, as long as you learn how to watch them without attachment. As long as you learn to watch them with proper mindfulness. Okay, I think this might be enough. Thank you, everybody, for your patient listening tonight. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.